Good evening. I'm opening up the public forum for the town council meeting that follows at 8 o'clock. The first speaker tonight is Sarah Maseo. Each speaker has 3 minutes at the microphone, up to 3 minutes, and we ask for your comments to be restricted to 3 minutes in length. You can pull that down towards your mouth, if you could. Yeah, it bends.
Can you hear me?
Yes, if you could pull it down just a little more, that would be great.
I don't want to break anything. Can you hear me?
Yes, and if you can
Okay.
first say your name and
My
then
name
your
is
address.
Sarah Maseo,
Uh-huh,
and I live at 101 Hollister Street in Stratford.
okay.
And the reason I am here, I was here a month ago in regards to a problem that prevails at the Bowen Center by the director, Diane Pertusky. After the meeting was over, you let me speak with Mr. Ng from the Human Resources. I gave him a list of whatever my allegations were. He was very polite to me, and he said he'd get back to me the next day. That was Monday. On Tuesday, he did not get back to me. On Wednesday, I waited to noon. He did not get back to me. So I called, and he was at a meeting. He came to the phone, and he told me that Diane was there with, exact words, all her staff and lawyers with an S and a CEO, and they met in regards to me not being a volunteer after I do over 400 hours a year. And this will be the only time in 14 years that I was not invited to the volunteer dinner because Diane changed the word volunteer. And he said to me, we came to an agreement that you're not a volunteer. Well, there's nothing I can do. If that's your decision, fine. I said to him, what about the rest of my allegations? And he said, well, that your main thing. I says, I know that was my main thing, but I talked to you about other problems. And he hesitated. I said, well, you know what I want, Mr. Ng? I want a copy of the other people that they were changed from volunteer. He said there was about 5. And I said to him, well, who are they? And the first thing he said, VFW. I happen to be a member of the Women's Auxiliary at the VFW on 9460. They do not have any meetings in the Baldwin Center, and as far as I know, they do not volunteer there. We get a monthly bulletin. It would be on the bulletin for their activity. Then he said the singing group. I said, we do not have a singing group. So I said to him, Mr. Ng, I would like a copy of all the people that were rejected. He said to me, well, I don't know if I can do that to you. I said, what about the freedom of information? And then he said to me, well, I don't know. I said, I don't want you to call me. I want you to send me a list of all the other people that they changed the word volunteering for. It's a month. He has not responded. That's the end of that. I want to get this one thing to you, and then I'll leave. It was Christmas time. My son carried 4 or 5 boxes, and I make and design all the costumes for the group. How many garment bags? I came into the center. My son left me. About 5 minutes later, someone from the office came to me and said to me, your son called. Your husband is... May I please continue?
Yeah, please.
Your husband is very sick. Would you please call home? I went in my pocketbook. I had 4 $1 bills. The pay phone is 25 cents. I went into the office, and there was a girl there. She didn't have any change. I avoid talking to Diane now because she hollers at me, and I cannot tolerate the hollering. So I went back, and I says, can I use the phone? You cannot use the phone in the office. Now, my husband just had a triple bypass. He's a veteran. He's diabetic. He's had 10 other operations. I can't use the phone. The library's closed. The Perry House is closed. Pisty's is closed. Was I supposed to run into St. James and say, Father Lynch, wait a minute. I think my husband's dying. They won't let me use a telephone. So the girl says to me, I got hyperventilated. This is my husband. And so first time in 20 years I ever got a private call. So the girl says, I'll open the switchboard. I said, please don't, because she's going to holler at you. I don't want people getting in trouble for me. And she said to me, no, I'm going to, give me the number. She dialed. My son picked up the phone, and Diane came out, and I'm sorry. My children weren't raised to use football voices in my house. We use indoor. what are you doing here? This is the private phone. Get off of the phone, get off of the phone. And she's screaming. I'm crying. My son says, what's the matter? I says, Diane doesn't want me to talk on the phone. How's Daddy? My husband got on the phone and he says, I told you a long time ago, get out of that place. I said, Frank, I just want to know. He says, I took my insulin, read the paper, and I fell asleep. He has to eat within 15 minutes of his insulin or he goes into his shock. He says, I'm fine. My son made me breakfast. I said, well, I want him to pick me up. I want to come home. And he said to me, no, Sarah, you worked so hard on 2 designs. I made a Christmas tree that I go inside. I have 250 lights, battery lights on it. My costumes are exotic. And I'm not bragging about them, nobody. And I made a snowman. I had a hand-sewn whalebone to make 3 scoops of a snowman. He says, you worked so hard on those costumes. I want you to be in the show. And she kept up with me while I was, get off of that phone, get off of that phone. Everybody's going to want to use the phone now. You think you can come in here and use the phone? And her voice was just immature, unprofessional, and rude. And I was crying. And all I can say is Isaiah 6:8. And the Lord said, I heard a voice, who is going to come? Who can I send? Who can I send? Who is going to come to help us? And I said, here I am, God. I am the messenger. And if you don't want to believe me, I really don't care. But I'm tired of the elderly abuse, not only to me, but to people that are disabled. And they won't talk back to her because they tell me they're afraid she's going to kick them out of the place. And I don't know what you're going to do about my other allegations. I don't know. Everybody's told me to your face, don't go to the town. They're going to do 0 for you, Sarah. You're going to bat 0 with them. You'll never get a help from anybody in the town of Stratford. My husband lived here 86 years. I've lived here 65 years. Pay my taxes faithfully, and I try my best to do it. I've made the Bowen Center on top with my show, with our show. We're at Channel 12. We're on internet and everything. I don't want to get anything. We did something for them, and I'm not a volunteer, but maybe there's 4 pots out in front of there. Maybe next year if I water the 4 pots like the lady that does, I don't know, 6 pots in there, she's called a volunteer. And I put over 400 hours, and I am not a volunteer in the center because she changed the word volunteer. I'm very sorry if I upset you, but it has upset me. Besides not giving me the ride when I needed it for my cancer treatment, I don't understand why nothing can be done. Do I want her to lose her job? No. I want justice. And I want her to treat me kind. I don't treat anybody that manner. And I don't understand why she does what she does. I really don't. And why nothing can be done to her. I mean, I'll take a lie detector test as long as she sits across from me and answers the same question. Because I know she'll deny everything I'm saying. Because she's smart. She doesn't do it in front of people. When you go in her office and you try to talk to her like I did the day I couldn't get the ride, she's going at the keyboard like that. Very rude. I have to talk over her, banging on the keyboard. Then I said to her, Diana, I'll tell you to your face, you're not a fair person. I want to continue. She said, goodbye. And she walked away. You know what that means? Get out of this office. I'm going to be 87 next year, and my tape is still working. I'm not a disgruntled person because I reported her a long time ago. But when I couldn't get a ride for a cancer treatment, when I never asked for a ride in 20 years, there's something wrong, something really wrong. And I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I know it's very difficult. The next speaker that signed up is Barbara Heimlich. I'm sorry, Mr. Paradis? Please don't do that. I know, it's disrespectful.
Barbara Heimlich, 91 College Street. 17 years ago today, the World Trade Center was attacked by extremists whose intent was to disrupt and destroy our democracy. Over 3,000 people were murdered at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, Shanksville, as well as passengers on the American and United Airlines that flew into the Twin Towers. Their plan to destroy our democracy was thwarted. They underestimated our resiliency. We have always overcome challenges of all kinds: trauma, tragedy, personal crises, death, and taxes. For 3 decades, the Twin Towers stood as the symbol of American economic might, the Statue of Liberty for freedom, the Pentagon for our mighty military. An important and defining characteristic of our country is the ability for any citizen over the age of 18, regardless of race, sex, or religion, to run for office and our right to vote. Tomorrow, Stratford will exercise that democracy. From 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., polling places will be open for all of us in town to begin the first step in electing our next slate of candidates for the November election. Since 9/11, about 6,650 Americans have died in Afghanistan and Iraq. More than 50,000 military have been wounded in battle since 9/11. 16,000 of them so seriously that they would have certainly died had they suffered the equivalent wounds in any prior conflict. These men and women made sacrifices so that we could retain our democracy. Stand tall tomorrow and do your civic duty. Get out to vote. To close, I would like all of you to take a moment to reflect on the losses that we are honoring today. Keep not only those who died on 9/11 in your heart, but the 1,140 people who worked, lived, or studied in Manhattan at the time of the attack, who have been diagnosed with cancer from toxins, as well as over 1,400 9/11 rescue workers who responded to the scene in the days and months after the attacks that have since died. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker that signed up is Thomas Yates.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the council. Thomas Yates, 30 Avery Street. This council took over 2 months to approve the parking project for Nichols School, and it was approved after 2 months. Tanner's Brook, that came out June 1st of this year. And I looked back through all the minutes of the previous council meetings. I cannot find where this council approved the contract. That was $1 million contract, and I can't find it anywhere in the minutes of the previous council meetings. I may be if I'm correct, I stand corrected if I misinformed on it, but I cannot find it anywhere in the minutes. Tanner's Brook, it came out 6/1 of this year. It's $975,000, went non-union, and it's a prevailing wage job. I hope this council and this town enforces prevailing wages on that contract. Another thing, I can't speak at WPCA meetings, but when they built 1111 Stratford Avenue and Avalon on Cut Spring Road, the applicant had to pay fully upfront sewer fees for those projects. Now this WPCA meeting, council, I guess, approved the 5-year tax abatement assessment fees for Southeast property on Ferry Boulevard. That should be all paid up front. If the council and WPCA are saying WPCA is in this dire funds for money and everything, it should have been paid all up at once, not give them over a 5-year period to pay for the sewer assessments, because it's almost $350,000. Another thing, Roosevelt Forest, they took down a ranger station. The town could have saved $21,000 if it was done a controlled burn by the fire department, and Public Works could have went in there, cleaned up the site, got the topsoil from the vendor that supplies it to the town of Stratford. We could have saved maybe $18,000 to $20,000 on that project. I look forward in the future that the town looks at maybe saving money or discussing projects maybe in-house. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Yates. The next speaker is Jennifer Budai. Did I say your name correctly?
The D and the B are backwards. Hi, I'm Jennifer Badai, 173 Woodcrest Ave, and I am here to talk to you about fracking waste. Sorry, can't hear
Go
you.
closer to the microphone.
Like this? I can't tell. Yeah? Okay. I will try to speak up. Oh, I have a few copies of just some bullet. A few weeks ago, I met a volunteer from Food and Water Watch in Connecticut, and she presented fracking waste and the hazards of fracking waste. And this is, of course, the residue that comes off of the water that is used to frack in Pennsylvania. We're probably all familiar with that. And we have an opportunity in Stratford to join 25 towns that have already banned fracking waste in Connecticut. And the reason why we need to ban fracking waste at the local level is because there has been an attempt to ban fracking waste at the state level that has not been successful, and even if it is eventually successful, it may not be strong enough. So I just want to read you a few points about this that are out of order, and the reason why I'm talking to you about this is because the ordinance has come to your agenda. So, fracking waste, there's so much fracking waste that is being generated in Pennsylvania that they are shipping it out to 8 different states. This waste is highly toxic. The waste is being moved around by thousands of tanker trucks and dump trucks, and sometimes the waste is turned into secondary product and permitted for other uses. This is where we're at risk. Can you guys hear me? You look very excited. Fracking waste is not exciting to you, Vinny? Come on. All right, I'm going to work on it. 3 minutes and the ding. Okay. Oh, right, I'm trying. Long list as to why to ban this locally. Handling and disposal of this waste is causing severe contamination wherever accidents and spills take place, and they do take place. This contamination runoff, leaching, and byproducts. Legislative bans have been passed in the region of Vermont. They've completely passed it. New Jersey legislature has passed it twice, but Christie has vetoed it. Boo. And Food and Water Watch has worked with Riverkeeper on ordinance language that has been used and strengthened throughout the 25 towns that have banned it so far. The language is very specific to waste from oil and gas drilling and extraction activity and storage of gas. No waste may be applied or placed on any properties or roads, and unfortunately we can't ban it from ban the transportation of fracking waste through the towns because of the federal interstate. However, it would make it illegal for tanker trucks to have leaking valves if they pass through our town, so that would be a win. There are currently 3 facilities in the state of Connecticut that could potentially receive the fracking waste. Bridgeport's one of them. We're at risk. Please vote to ban the fracking waste in Stratford and join the other towns.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Gerald Gray.
Good evening, Gerald Gray, 29 Shoreline Drive. I have become well recognized for my attendance at monthly meetings of Town of Stratford mayors, commissions, boards, and agencies, for my monthly public forum submissions to Town Council, for my submissions to Stratford Star. My topics of submissions generally as well as specifically always go to addressing the dark and dirty area of the corruption of the Stratford machine, with my naming of names and my detailing of the misconduct and malfeasance and municipal predation, racketeering perpetrated upon Stratford-located prey by town attorneys, town employees, departments, commissions, agencies, office holders, politicos et al. George Mulligan warned me of targeted danger and retaliation that would befall me because I was publicly attacking, quote, extremely powerful, extremely dangerous parties. Like George himself experienced, and as he warned me, there has been, currently is, ugly and unlawful and criminal blowback being inflicted upon me, and it has been, is perpetrated by, quote, extremely powerful, extremely dangerous parties, whom are integral members of the Stratford machine. Everyone taking even a modicum of interest of political doings in town of Stratford is well aware of what a dire situation we are in, of what a pit of sewage we are mired in. Many dozens of Stratford residents speak of now how they would gladly flee this town to relocate elsewhere. And as the budget battle rages on and on, Stratford residents continue to be abused by the outrageously predatory and unlawful rapaciousness that is and has long been perpetrated by the marauding members of the Stratford machine in their municipal predation plot actions of improperly, unconstitutionally, unlawfully, criminally preying upon Stratford-located targeted prey, of their grabbing of assets, property, money from Stratford-located target prey for purpose of transfer into their own coffers. The prey, the victims, are the Stratford residents. The perpetrators are collusive, collaborative, conspiratorial Town of Stratford attorneys, Town of Stratford employees, mayor-appointed and elected members of town departments, boards, commissions, agencies. They are Stratford-located office holders and politicos. And I can corroborate and confirm Sarah Maseo's assertions and confirm that indeed Diane Petursky and Shirley Dominguez and the Baldwin Center are deeply, deeply complicit and collaborative in perpetration of criminal activity. However, my speaking to this is the little boy crying out the obvious truth that the emperor has no clothes, as these issues of the deeply entrenched, long-standing, long-operating corruption and dirty dealings and racketeering that are the true relevant issues which are at heart of so much of what is so very wrong with and in Stratford are verboten. With our current election battleground rhetoric being centered so much on taxes, only mayoral candidate Joe Paul is even going near the issue of the deeply entrenched, long-standing, long-operating corruption of the Stratford machine. Joe Paul says he wants to break the tyranny that is so destructive to our town. I say, people of Stratford, it is long overdue time to take back Stratford. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The next speaker is Mark Scheck. Okay, then I'm crossing his name off of this list. I will not be calling him again. Next speaker is Frank Paradis.
My name is Frank Paradis. I live at 798 East Broadway. At least I'd like to thank everybody for being here. Huge crowd. Oh, well. Today is a very important day. Thank you, Barbara, for reminding us that, that we assume, that we have tomorrow. We assume that we have, we have to be prepared for the unexpected in our world, that who would have think that a hurricane could walk up the length of Florida's peninsula and, more or less destroy most of southern Florida? Who would think that Texas could be inundated by vast amounts of water? Who would think that people would fly airplanes into buildings? I mean, the world is a crazy place, and we see examples of it here just now, that people are not really grounded in reality and rationality, that people come before you and complain about things that are really not things that you have anything to do with. You're not part of the justice system, or even the executive, but unfortunately people assume that. Appreciate you all being here. I've noticed that many of you are not. I hope that they show up in time. And I guess one other speaker wants to go next, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Lisa CASAC.
Hi, Lisa CASAC, 50 Birdseye Street, Stratford. I didn't know whether this was appropriate when I first came. That's why I did not sign up, but Barbara spoke about this, and it's 9/11 that I just want to talk briefly about. The hurricanes are horrible, and the news is sort of more about hurricanes, but of course today there was a lot about 9/11 also. I happen to have known the young man who took over the airplane and crashed it into the field in Pennsylvania. And perhaps later when you salute the flag, somebody will probably ask for a moment of silence, but I would like to ask something a little more special. If there's anyone here that knows someone or of someone that died in that day, on that day, or as a result of that, I'd like them to stand up and just have a moment's silence. I am standing. Is there anyone else in the room? Thank you. I think that was very appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. CASAC. There being no more speakers right now, we will recess until 7:30. I thought they had 45 minutes. People have 45 minutes to show up. It's 30 minutes? Ah, thank you. Okay, we will recess till 7:15. Thank you very much.